Oh, welcome. In this tutorial, we will be using a Gridview object to edit information from a table. For this example, we've created a website, and to this website we've added a database. Now this database consists of two tables, a people table and a states table. And you'll notice that in the people table we are using the state ID to reference the state name in the states table. And to do this, we create a relationship. As this diagram indicates, we are creating what is known as a foreign key constraint between the states ID of the people table and the state ID of the states table. So we've also created a web page in which we'll be able to put a Gridview object. So let's do that. And you may want to actually rename the Gridview ID to something more descriptive of what it is, but we'll leave that like that. You go to Design, and you'll notice that there is a smart tag that we can open up that will give us some tasks. Alright, and we'll need to choose a data source so we can link information from a table to be displayed in the data view object. So we're going to choose new data, and we'll use our SQL database, and you may want to rename that ID something more descriptive and click OK. Now we previously have created a connection string to connect to the database, so we're going to choose to use that and click Next. Now you also notice that there's actually two options here for configuring your select statements. You can use the wizard, where you just have to check some boxes and the wizard will create all the syntax that you need. Select, like right now, select all from people. Or you can use a custom select SQL statement, where you can either write out the syntax by yourself, or you can use their query builder to add tables and to actually choose them from there, and that will create customized select or update statements. And you also have your update where you can do the same thing in that. For us, we are going to use the wizard and allow it to create our syntax for us. Alright. One thing we are going to do is we are going to allow the wizard to generate some insert, update, and delete statements. And then we'll collect Next. Now you can always test your query to make sure that you're connecting to your database correctly. And click Finish. Now you notice that the Gridview task has actually been expanded, and we have an option of checking enable editing, because that's what we're planning on doing, and you'll see it creates an extra column there. Now before we go any further, let's just look at the source and look at the markup here, and you'll see now that since we had our grid view, it's added some data fields, a command field for the button, the edit button, and then the bound fields, which are bound to the various columns in the people table. And our SQL data source it actually contains the SQL commands for delete, insert, here's the select command that it did, and the update command. You may notice that in the syntax for the update, or actually in the insert also, this @ symbol. This @ symbol means that the value of that parameter will be added later. Alright, so let's go back to look at this, and let's actually run this and see what it looks like. here you can see that we have our grid view, but you'll notice that the state ID is just a cryptic number, and unless you know exactly what the state name is associated with this number, it's going to be kind of hard to make any editing. If you click the edit button, you also notice that since the person ID is auto-generated by the database, you're not allowed to update that field. But these other fields you are able to update. But again, with the state ID, it's going to be sort of hard to do. So it would be beneficial to the user if we would present a drop-down list that contains all the state names, and then you can just click the associated state that you want and click update. So we're going to have to work on this grid view in order to get that to work for us. One other item that we might want to talk about is we're going to have to look at these columns. Alright, now since we're going to want to put a drop down list in the state ID, we're going to select that field and we're going to convert that into a template field, and then we can click OK. Now you don't notice anything different right now, but if you look back at the source, the markup has changed, and the bound field for the state ID has been turned into a template field, and there's actually two templates that have been created. The edit item template, which contains a text box, and that is bound to the state ID, and the item template, so that's what's shown when you first generate the grid view, with a label that's also bound to the state ID. Alright, so we'll go back to design, and then we're going to go all the way down here to the edit template, and then here you can see the item one with the label and the edit item one. So we want to change the edit item one to a drop down list. So we're going to remove that text box, and in its place we're going to put a drop down list. Now with this drop down list, we are also going to have to choose a data source so that it knows what data is going to be displayed in the drop down list. So we're going to choose a data source for it, and in this wizard we will not choose the people table, which is what our first one was, but we're going to choose a new source. And of course we're sort of going to do the same thing with our SQL database. We will change this one to the second and click OK. We're going to use our same connection string. Now we're going to actually choose the states table, since that's what we want, and we're going to choose all columns from the states table and finish. Now this configuration wizard will ask us, what do you want to see in the display field? Well, we don't want to see the state ID. We don't know what that number means, so we're going to actually show the state name. And we can click OK. But we're also going to need to edit the data bindings for that. So we really want to do that selected value to state IDs. This is the people's table, right? We want whatever we choose in that drop-down list to be related to the state ID. And always check this two-way data binding. Alright, so let's go ahead and edit, or end the editing, end template editing. And let's go ahead and run that now. Okay, well I see that, well, we still get the state ID in the item because we didn't create any a different kind of binding to that label. But when you do hit the edit button now, we see that, well, number 12 is actually North Carolina. And while there is an Arlington in North Carolina, we're going to make it more like Texas. Texas, where's Texas? Arlington, Texas. Okay, so you can see the state ID has changed. But we really want to make this a little more appealing to the user also, so we really need to edit the bindings for that label. And if you go back to edit these templates and you click on the smart tag for the label and edit the bindings for that, you'll see that, well, you really don't have any other option because this is the people table. Alright, so the way that we're going to do that is we're going to actually modify our SQL data source. And what we're going to do is we're going to join the people table. Hold on, let me edit bindings here first, and that first. Let's do that. Let's go back to the configuration of the data source. And so this is one of the drawbacks of this wizard. It only allows you to choose one table to choose from. If you want to do a join to another table, you're really going to have to use this custom SQL statement. Alright, so we still are going to have our updates that the original wizard created for us, but in this select statement, we're going to use that query builder that I showed you. And you can see that it already contains the table for the people's table, but if you go into this area and right click, we can add a table. We can add the states table. Thank you. And then we can choose the state name. Now, rather than that asterisk for the peoples, now we've actually got all the columns from the people table, and in addition to the state name from the states table. And that's done with this inner join between the people table and the states table using that foreign key constraint on the state ID. Alright, so we can click that, click next. Of course, we could always test our query and finish. The only problem is since we didn't do this at the beginning, which, if you know you're going to be using this, I would suggest doing that at the beginning. When we refresh this grid view, we're going to lose everything that we did on that. Alright, so we'll go back here and quickly redo some of that. We're going to edit and enable editing to add that extra column. And then in our edit columns, we're going to have to go back to this state ID. Now we're going to use the state ID. These are the columns in the people table, which was what we're doing, so we really don't want to make that the template field. We want to continue to use our state idea, turn that into the template field, and then edit templates. Alright, now we should be able to edit the bindings of this label before we go and redo our drop-down list. Well, we're right there. And so now we're going to have this state name to as a value that we can edit, we can bind to that label. Alright, now we'll have to really just go back and choose the edit item template. Again, delete the text box, add the drop-down list, re-choose the data source. We're going to make a new one again since we lost that last one. We'll call it 2 again. Use the same connection string. Choose the states table. And click finish. Again, I'm going to choose the state name to actually appear, but the state ID is going to be the value that's going to actually be put into the people's table. And can't forget to do your data bindings. And again, we want to bind the selected value to the people's table column state ID. Boom. Again, edit, end the editing. And actually, before we run this, we really don't need to see the person ID since you can't change it anyway, and we don't want to actually see the state name, so we can go to edit columns. If you choose that person ID column, there is a visible attribute. We can change it to false. The state name, we can go to the visible attribute also and change it to false. And now they will not appear in our grid view. Okay, now we can run this. And everything should be okie dokie. There, now we actually see the state ID, and I guess it could have actually changed the text to make just say state. But when you edit it, you got Buck Dunbar from Salem. Well, even though it's in North Carolina, it could be Salem, Oregon. So if you look to Oregon and update it, Viola. So there you go. If you look at this source, you'll probably actually be able to see here we got our edit item tablet with our drop down list and our second data source and the connection strings and all that. And now, but you notice that the selected value was bound to the state IDs, but for the label it's been changed to the state name. It's been bound to the state name now. So then you can do a little bit of styling if you like to make it look a little bit more presentable to the user, but all in all, that's a quick and down and dirty way that you can use a grid view object to edit information from a table. Thank you.